So good afternoon, everybody. My name is David Bruno. I am Associate Dean of Academic and Workforce Partnerships at Camden County College. I'm joined together here with Sean Dwyer. Sean, do you want to introduce yourself very quickly?
For sure. Absolutely. My name is Sean Dwyer. I'm the Esports Director at Camden County College and the co-coordinator of the Esports production degree.
And on the other box, or however you want to term it, there is Mr. Joshua Kell. So Josh, you want to do a quick introduction of yourself?
Yep. My name is Joshua Kell. I am the CEO of Esports Integration and Horizon AVL. We help build out esports programs for colleges, high schools, middle schools, and elementary programs across the U.S.
Fantastic. Well, again, thank you, everybody, for joining us. Again, this is the LinkedIn Live session on Esports Scholastic program integration. That's a mouthful for middle schools, but we're really going to talk not only just middle school, but really how that aligns together with high school and with college. Because again, one doesn't exist without the other, and I think that's been kind of where we've really grown in this in this opportunity. Regarding our role from the college's side in helping high schools and now other K through 12 related districts and entities see the pathways forward. So what we're going to talk about a lot today is really our experience here from Camden County, which again, we're based here in Southern New Jersey. But I know, Josh, you, while you are based here also in Southern New Jersey, you've worked around the country. So do you want to talk about, and actually outside of the country, so do you want to kind of share your experience a little bit, just kind of where you've been, what you've done?
Yeah. So for the last 8 years now, maybe even greater than 8 years, we have had an amazing opportunity to work with a lot of different educational institutions, helping them build their programs, like I said in my intro. But, our agenda and really our mission and our goal in what we do and how we build out these programs is to prepare the learner for a career path, and not just in the world of esports, but really the transferableness that happens with the skills that are developed through the lens of esports, right? And Dave, you and I, we often say the vehicle or the vessel of esports to really utilize something that from a cultural perspective, these individuals, these students, these learners are engaged with, and then taking that and to then help them develop the skill set that they need to prepare them for workforce development, for a career pathway. And so, the landscape that we've been working with has really been around the country, and that's been really exciting. It's not just in our home state in New Jersey, but beyond New Jersey. So many states really have started to adopt this world of esports, and they're seeing the benefits of what esports can bring, all the way from higher education. A lot of institutions, we work with over 100 plus colleges and universities across the U.S. And now the amount of high schools, middle schools, and even elementary schools that we have been working with has been really exciting to see that uptick. And it's not just building facilities and programs, but it's academically, as we're explaining, we've developed our own curriculum that starts as soon as 5th grade. So it's really exciting to kind of see that entire landscape come to fruition.
I guess really this is kind of a general question. Again, either you or Sean could answer this, but how's the landscape changed? Again, what is different today on May 26, 2026 versus where it was when we implemented our esports program, 3+ years ago? Or where was, how's it different from where it was, 10 years ago? So maybe Josh, if you want to kind of kick that off and we can kind of just fill in the gap from where we've seen this industry shift a little bit.
Sure. So early on, obviously you have a lot of the professional or organization adoption that has happened from really that hierarchy perspective. And then, and really the thought process of collegiate was kind of right there, kind of right behind that, I would say. Not so much thought of in a high school. Yes, there were high schools across the U.S. that were starting this grassroots concept, but only at a club level. Middle schools, some, I mean, maybe you could count them 10 years ago, maybe, less than a dozen across the country that wanted to start an esports program. Today, we are seeing a major shift where when you look at something like traditional sports, the foundational element of from elementary to middle school to high school to collegiate progression, I think has really, really shifted as far as that hierarchy is concerned, where it's not so much inverted, right? Previously, if we look, 5 years ago or so, even prior to, 2018, 2019, you are seeing an inverted element to the world of esports. Now, I think it's started to flip quite a bit, quite significantly, and we are seeing a massive, massive uptick in the world of esports in K-12, and so that I think has been a huge, huge element to the world of the change that has happened in esports and more specifically esports and education. So
Now, I know when we adopted our esports programming at Camden County, we really looked at that landscape and we saw a void as well. We saw this, we saw activity again. There was, certainly esports programs, in the States, on a collegiate side. There were things across the river over in Philadelphia. But everybody was doing kind of something different, and nobody was kind of taking it to the next level. And I know when we first had our conversations, again, this goes back over half a decade now ago or so, it really was, how do we see the future of esports? And this is back in 2020 and 2019. How do we see the growth of this industry occurring? And where do we fit into that zone to not only be an active member and to support that growth, but also to be ready for that, 10-year cohort, to, not only succeed academically, but also to kind of, be fulfilled from a, really from a, intercollegiate standpoint and a league standpoint. So that's kind of the lens that we took, when we adopted our programming here. So not only did we set in motion a 2-year esports production degree at the time, back in 2022, which launched 2023, but we also began actively pushing our esports intercollegiate program, to be of the highest caliber, the highest level. Having human resource, day one supporting this, not having it be a club-like approach, but really kind of using that athletics model to go into it. And that's kind of where Dwyer was brought in as our esports director. So again, Sean, I'll kind of pivot to you at this point, kind of describe the landscape that you saw, on the collegiate side, because we're going to map this over then to the high school and the middle school side in just a moment. But describe what the collegiate sphere was like at that time and where it's at today.
Sure. I mean, and to piggyback off of what Josh was saying, right, we are now seeing that kind of grassroots kind of approach as opposed to that top down. And so to answer your question directly, Dave, at the time, if we're talking about 5-6 years ago, I mean, we affectionately refer to it as, the Wild West, or the Wild West of esports about 5 or 6 years ago, where you had some league activity, even from a collegiate standpoint, but there really wasn't a whole lot of order to the chaos. It was a lot of, you had college teams playing out of computer labs that are, simply student run. Now you're beginning to, I think what we've taken one of the wilds off of the Wild West, where now it's beginning to calm down a little bit, right? So you now have a little bit more of a streamlined league activity from colleges, whereas before you may have had really 6 or 7. Now you have some major players, 3 or 4, with more standardized rule sets, expectations of eligibility for these players, right? Because when we talk about esports players, we treat them like student athletes. And so, we're talking about requiring certain levels of GPA, requiring certain levels of full-time status or credit requirements. And so now you're beginning to see colleges, begin to standardize that approach. So whereas, when we began 5 years ago, it was not uncommon to have, a schedule for one of our teams in a league and have half of the games be a forfeit, right? Which sounds just kind of ridiculous when you look at it from a traditional sports model. So you're now beginning to see that as that standardization has kind of crept up, you're beginning to see a higher quality of product. And also now that we're getting those middle schoolers, those high schoolers that are used to league activity coming through, you now have a higher quality of person who's coming in, who now knows how to be coached, who now knows, what the expectations are.
And I think, again, when you talk to Josh, I like that, the number of middle schools that maybe were involved in this 10 years ago or so, you can count on, two hands. I very much feel like when we implemented our programming, again, this is, less than 5 years ago, there were probably the same number of, kind of quality collegiate programs in the Delaware Valley region that you can count on two hands. But today it's not. I mean, today you're almost the odd person out, kind of, on the outside looking in if you don't have an active esports collegiate program right now. And again, I think that is where, I think the biggest growth that we've seen is not only do we take it, very seriously at the collegiate level, but now there's active competition with multiple colleges and institutions within a very proximate area, to keep pushing us to provide the highest quality product that we possibly can. So again, I think really the growth has occurred to the point where it's extremely common to find an active collegiate program. And now the relationship that we see on the high school level is becoming more and more formalized, more and more clear. We are now getting active requests from high school players, to be considered, a part of our team, at a 2-year institution. Whereas again, 2, 3, 4 years ago, they didn't even know where to contact, who to contact. Now they know that, again, I'm an active member of my Valorant team, or again, I'm excellent at Rocket League, or whatever the title may be. They know they have a landing spot not only locally, but they can also now kind of shop around a little bit and look at some of these other opportunities at some of these other college programs. Josh, is it this, again, I know we talk very locally. We're very proud of what's happened locally here, but do you see the same trends on a national level?
Yeah, you are. I mean, if we take what we're doing in Florida right now, we are actually starting at the middle school level. We're not actually starting at high school, because the one thing that we want to build upon, and high school is to follow. So I don't want to sound like we're not going to go into a lot of high school, but there are a lot of great programs in the state of Florida that already at a high school level, but reaching down into the middle school and creating that pipeline and that pathway moving forward is extremely important. What we're seeing, Florida is just one example of one of the states that we're working with, but a lot of schools are starting to recognize the importance of what an esports program can bring. And the title of this session is Esports Scholastic Program. So and I almost want to define kind of those elements, because there's esports program, there's esports programs, and then there's scholastic esports programs, right? Those are two different things, right? Because scholastic, obviously, meaning from in my mind, the educational element that it's not just a school that is bringing an esports program. Yes, it's scholastic from a hierarchy perspective, but anyone can have an esports program, and those schools that are building out esports programs as an after-school activity, extracurricular, that's great and all. But where we're really starting to see the shift is that scholastic, that actual academic component to where these schools are starting to thrive, because now they're starting to understand that this isn't just an after-school activity, and it's not just a club thing. It's a lot more. And so that's where the switch is starting to happen with a lot of these institutions. Like I said, we're technically starting as soon as 5th grade with what we're doing academically with the coursework and the curriculum. And so when we have that tie to that, now the esports program, which still in a lot of schools, there is still the stigma of playing video games. is starting to diminish. And so when it's not just about the competition, and the competition is really important, I don't want to downplay that from a league perspective or anything, that you can't have one without the other. But where it's really starting to build up across the country in these middle school opportunities and beyond in high school is the academic component. And that's one of the great things that we are doing. In New Jersey, we have a lot of great clients that have adopted our coursework and curriculum from 5th grade to 12th grade, right? And so we know it's working here in New Jersey, because then that leads to programs like you're saying, when you have a bunch of students that are reaching out to you from a 2-year institution or even 4-year colleges that are out there, or universities, there is now this switch that sort of has happened, that there is a pipeline. Before, there really wasn't a true pipe. We understood, we in the industry understood the pipeline. No one else really understood what the pipeline was until.
And I think that was a decision that we had to make. I know here at Camden County that, for a pipeline to exist, you needed kind of that end, end of the pipe in some way. Again, I know industry essentially career is the end of the real end of the pipe, but again, if we don't exist from a collegiate side, if we don't have an academic program or a sustainable an organized intercollegiate program, the high school component, it's just not going to exist. It's going to exist for fun and fun only, because again, there's no way that the industry can be supported by high school students jumping directly into the pro side of things. And we saw that, I think, pretty clearly, 10, 15 years ago, with the venture capital money that was being dumped into some of these, leagues and tournaments, et cetera, that there wasn't this pipeline. Again, I think it is a perfect term, where students can enter in at a specific spot and have a path through and multiple exit points as to where they want to be in the industry in some way. Whether or not they want to continue into industry after a 2-year degree, or at least some exposure from a couple of courses here at a community college, or if they want to transfer onto a 4-year institution, and then go beyond that as we go forward. So without putting that part of the pipe in place, again, you're going to have leaks. You're going to have, a flow that's just not sustained in some way, and it's going to dissipate, all throughout the ecosystem and the industry as a result. So I think that part was important to fortify a number of years ago. And again, from where I've seen the industry is that, again, as Sean alluded to, it's not the wild west anymore. It's the Wild West, or again, I like to call it just the West at this point. We're at that spot where it's looking a lot better. You have better league activity. You have conferencing. You have, again, the PEC. You have, what we built here in Jersey with the, Garden State Esports Collegiate Conference. We're seeing these approaches take shape that's helping to give multiple opportunities for students to participate in. So really that middle school and high school component now has kind of another landing spot that they can be proud of. And I think that's been the biggest change that I've seen. Again, I'm sure, Sean, you've seen this as well, is the parent interactions. Again, the parents aren't, again, the stigma, not only is the stigma not there, but now they're asking very thoughtful, strategic questions regarding the growth opportunities of their children. It really is, it's not why esports. It's now what areas of esports, can my child kind of thrive in, or how do I help position he or she, to be, the best in some way. So it's again, it's not the, why, it's the how do I position, my child for future success in this industry as we go forward. So again, that shift is definitely there. Again, I know you see it from the conversations that you have.
Yeah, no question. And just to piggyback off of that, I mean, I think the perfect example of that was just a couple months back with the Garden State Esports College Combine, which we had up there at Brookdale, right? So you're talking about parents now involved in getting their high school students opportunity, right? So using esports as the vessel for, learning new skills to enter into the workforce, or, skills within the competitive environment to land scholarships. I forget the exact number, Dave. You might have to correct me, but there were some number of scholarships offered when we brought 40 New Jersey Esports All-Stars up there at Brookdale Community College to showcase their skills to colleges. And then it was not just from New Jersey, of course, out of state as well. So, I mean, they're more competitive now, are the colleges.
And think about that wasn't even a possibility 3 or 4 years ago in the state of New Jersey. Again, I'm going to assume also nationally, but there wasn't this notion of, even hosting or having a combine to showcase the skills of these students because there wasn't enough landing spots for them really to even consider. Again, this industry has grown a lot, in terms of the high school opportunities that go into it. But that really can start, as you kind of mentioned earlier, Josh, it can start in middle school, should start in middle school. Let me say should start in middle school, or even, grades and ages lower than that. So I guess, kind of what you're seeing right now, Josh, with the conversations that you're having with the middle schools, what are they looking what are they looking for? What are they asking you about, regarding the opportunities? Because again, I think we've created this opportunity of, college esports experience now exists. It's now quality, and we've mapped it to real industry career opportunities. What does the middle school need to do to capitalize on that opportunity? Because again, there's a lot of space between when a student enters in, let's say the fourth, fifth grade. Again, I know every district's a little bit different, state's different, but if they're coming in that age range, what are they asking for? What do they need from you, from an industry side of things, to help them move along?
Well, the first thing that they ask is, what is the pathway forward, and what does this truly look like? Because they still ask the question, are they going to end up playing games? so kind of going back to that a little bit, but we quickly steer that conversation away from the world of playing games and then look at well, what are all the different opportunities from a skill set? And then from a middle school perspective, we're also trying to align that pipeline moving forward into high school and where they're going to go. Are they going to go to a technical school? Does the school that they have career and technical education opportunities and coursework? So we are looking at a couple of things. And the couple of things they're asking, one, what leagues can we get into? And so we kind of help paint that picture for them a little bit. There's leagues that are that are free. There are some that pay, and then we kind of talk through, well, if there is a student from a non-academic side but a competitive side that's really a star athlete, and what is their path, right? So we kind of have to break this down into multiple different chunks. And so the first one is let's address the competitive side. What are you doing competitively with the hardware, the components, the elements that you're putting inside of the room? Because it's not just about the platform that you're playing on anymore. It is really what resources and tools are we going to give that particular athlete? No different than a traditional athlete. If it's a football player, you don't put them on a sandy beach and say play football, because that's not the conditions that they're going to see moving forward. And so when we're looking at it from a competitive side, that pipeline and what they're asking moving forward, we have to say, well, here's the standardization that's happening of what they could see at an institution, 2-year, 4-year, et cetera. And so we help paint that picture. We are at that stage where there is the 1%, or really less than 1%, of individuals that go on to go to play professionally. And that's also a realization that we bring to the table. A lot of these students are pretty good. Exactly. Like traditional sports, it really doesn't matter. And so that's something that we kind of help paint that picture with. Now, academically, this is kind of where it starts to shift with our approach and the way that we start having these conversations with these middle schools and elementary schools. We once again come back to that element of, if esports is this vehicle or this vessel, these are the outcomes. And then at high school, if these are the career and technical education clusters that you are going into, how do we then build out your esports program to align to that, right? And so that is really then our academic goal in building out these programs. It's not just here's the competitive side, but here's also the academic side, because you have to realize in the world of esports, you have production and marketing and hospitality and all of these other elements that come into play that are outside of the world of competitive play. And so this offers then the opportunity, even at a middle school level, where one of the middle schools that we're building right now, we're building actually a full Unreal Engine volume. Wow. I mean, they're getting a volume, which is LED, right? The LED backdrop. And for those who don't know what volumes are, think of like a green screen, but it's not green. It's an actual backdrop itself, right? And so we are even at a middle school level teaching software like Unreal Engine, not from a game design perspective and game development perspective, which is one way you can approach it, sure, but we are actually approaching it very differently from a perspective of multiple different pathways moving forward, where Unreal Engine can fulfill those different elements, not just in the world of production, but in design and graphic design and architecture, and what Twin Motion sort of offers with the world of Unreal Engine. So there's all of these different elements that we're utilizing gaming and esports and something like Unreal Engine to then teach on that, and then they use those skills to then couple with the competition to create this holistic approach. And so that's how middle schools are approaching this. They're, like I said, that switch kind of switched for them. They've turned on this other, they switched to this other gear rather than just say we're going to have after school activities and play competitively.
Mm-hmm. Now, I guess, why do you think that switch changed? I guess, where do you see? I mean, again, I have my theories, of course. Again, I do think that the organization that's kind of occurred on the collegiate side and even on the high school side has kind of fueled a lot of these kind of inquiries, these conversations, about, really the benefits of esports and understanding it from an academic side of things, that these skills are transferable skills, that they're not, again, we're not training gamers here at this particular institution. We're not training gamers or supporting gamers in the high school level. Again, if that happens, that's great. So be it. That's, again, we all hope that can occur, but it really is about, the career skill set that they need, to be successful in this 21st century kind of job market that's out there. And again, I think that collegiate base that was so, and again, was the wild, wild west a couple of years ago. Now, if we're kind of seeing it, much more organized, formalized, and supported, it gives middle school kind of a target, kind of a goal for them to align with, essentially to build towards, to make sure that their students are, kind of on that path to, in career exploration. But I also think it's also the coming out of, again, I don't want to say coming out of COVID necessarily, but certainly, I guess how our society has kind of accepted, this gaming culture even more. Again, I think that's also fueling, some very deep conversations that are occurring not only in the high school level again, but also in the middle school level. You have a parent group, a parent set. Again, they're in that generational age where they've grown up gaming. And now they're seeing this as, oh yeah, this makes perfect sense. Why wouldn't we want our students, our children to have these opportunities? Let's build out this skill set, even more as it goes forward. But again, I don't know. What are your thoughts there, Josh?
Let me use a video game analogy to try to walk through this concept of why or how it has changed, why the switch has changed. So if I think like early adoption of playing a video game, you're going through the content the first time. And if it's a game that is repeatable or that you could play over and over again, or join with online people and kind of, whether it's an MMO or some other online style game, when when you're first going through the game, you're sort of the pioneer, right? You haven't seen the content the first time, but that content's enjoyable. That content now you've gone through the content, and now you become basically the someone who's preaching the game and how great it is. And then you start talking to your other friends through that, and then they join, but you join along with them, not necessarily to just kind of quickly blitz them through the game, but to enjoy the game alongside them. And so what's happened in the world of esports is we've had those early adopters that are in the Wild West that are going out there and pioneering this world. And there were a lot of things that were unexplored or were unobtainable or well, we thought were unobtainable, and didn't know how to get there. And we were trudging the path, right? And going through that content for the first time. But now what we're seeing is those individuals that have actually gone through and have been involved in the world of gaming and esports and what esports can actually lend to outside of the world of esports have now been those pioneers that have walked through that content in that game. And now we're bringing along all of our friends. And so those friends are now seeing because they said, oh, well, you've completed the game. You've done the thing, you've done the task, and you did it well. And look at all the things that you've posted. And so now they're like, well, what? Now I want to do that. And so now what's happening is that hype sort of saying, oh, now we see, like you said this game was awesome, and you really had this amazing opportunity and success, and you've gone through all of this. You've told us this, but now we see all of it. So now we want to go through it. And so now we're kind of seeing everyone saying, oh, now let's actually do it. And I think that's just due to natural, like human nature is we don't like change. And we don't like things that are not tried and true and different. And so we kind of walk very, very cautiously. And especially when it comes to education and young lives that are being affected through that, what are those outcomes and what did that look like? But then when the experience is positive on the other side and the person who's actually walked through it and has actually done all the content, not that I'm giving away spoilers the entire time you're playing the game, but I also, what's great is I get to see something like when my kids go through like a game that I played like a while ago and now they play along with me. I get to see the joy of them walking through that content for the first time. And they're like, oh, this is really fun. This is really cool. Now I see the benefit of this, of what this game is and what it can do. And so esports is, I think, in a lot of lines the same way, where it's gone from the complete Wild West or Wild Wild West, however many wilds you want to put on that, to the West, and maybe even the beginning of civilization in the West, right? So, I mean, you can use Oregon Trail if you want to use the game, which probably most old school gamers would lend to. But that is, I think that unfolds just kind of the natural progression is there are those that are the pioneers, the ones that go out there and do it. Some, unfortunately, catch typhoid and they die along the way, or they didn't ford the river properly, and next thing you know, the raft falls apart, using your Oregon Trail lingo. But there are those that aren't successful in completing the game, but then those that are successful, that have then the grit to get through it and to continue on, they do go back and they say, now let me be your trail guide, let me help you walk through this. And I've been around the block, and I've actually have the accolades to do that. And you're seeing a lot more of that. And so I think that's why middle schools and high schools and institutions are starting to adopt more of that, because people have actually walked through it. And there's security in that. There's a little bit more safety in it.
And then from a business standpoint, I mean, we're talking about the ecosystem kind of evolving, growing, maturing. I mean, Josh, it's very similar to what you're talking about. We've got now gamers, right? People that have been involved with esports beginning to age and mature. And from a business standpoint, that's very exciting, because as these gamers age and mature, they now have jobs. They have money to spend, and that supports the ecosystem, right? Because, I mean, if you go 10 years ago, all right, I know that you're a Counter-Strike player, so am I. A bunch of us in high school playing Counter-Strike, that wasn't going to support an industry. But now, as this kind of wave of gamers begins to enter into the job market, you're beginning to see that stability and that attractive, part of esports, the ecosystem, and that it trickles down from there, right? Because every industry does need that, that academic pipeline to support it. Right. So I think you're going to start to see that as well.
Now, when a middle school comes to you, Josh, and says, how do I get started? What do I do? What do we need to do? I guess my first question for you is, and again, because it's really how do you answer the general how, but a more specific how is, how do I do this with an esports program, or how do I can I do this without an esports program? In other words, does the academic side need to coexist with an interscholastic program, or can they exist, completely separate of each other, or just have one exist without the other? Again, I guess that's my question. Is this an all-in kind of thing, or, can they layer it in, along the way?
Well, yeah. So if I unpack that a little bit, so let's look at it from a silo perspective. Can you have just kind of this after school element in the club, or even a team like as traditional varsity, right? And well, middle school that's not really varsity, but we'll just say after school competition. Yes, it can stand alone, but what you will start to see over time is those that were really excited about the program, that kind of got it off the ground, the students that were involved, they're transient and they move on. And so you then need to have a very strong plan in place to keep that going. And that's where we see a lot of programs have a lot of success. And if the advisor moves on, or the teacher, that's where it starts to get really sticky, and it kind of falls and trails off. And so if you're going to silo it, the best way that we normally say is, let's build you out a real plan that you can have 3 to 5 year goals with that process. And really that 3 to 5 year plan counts for everything I'm kind of going to lay out for all the other silos as well. But that plan is where actually most programs either come in, fail, or plateau, so that's that's something that we see. Yeah, you can have it siloed. Now, where the benefit comes into play when we're looking at both academic and competitive, this is where we see one feed into the other, and you create a cycle that exists. And so when you plan out a middle school element academically and in classroom, during the classroom, you want it to support the after school activity. And then you want the after school activity to have takeaways that then support the in classroom outcomes. And so when you fully adopt that cycle, you will see a healthier program. And you could, like I said, you could have one without the other. We can also have the academic without the other, but now you start missing some key components to some of the outcomes and the curriculum that we've developed. And it kind of falls short because you don't have the after school or the competitive side. And so it should be done as a handshake between the two.
Yeah. And again, I don't think there's any difference with a traditional after school activity. So again, I always pivot to my children specifically. So my one daughter just finished up her lacrosse season in her middle school. Yet there was no other kind of complementary activities, connected to that after school activity. It was, you go to practice for lacrosse, you play lacrosse, you go home. There wasn't a crew, a production team that was there on a regular basis, kind of recording it, keeping stats, kind of doing a pregame or a postgame show. Not that to say this has to happen, but I think this notion of it happening through esports activity is easier. It's almost encouraged because the digital content is there. I mean, again, it's not as if you have to necessarily bring out an additional crew to record. Again, it's all kind of happening in the game itself. It's just a matter of having maybe an additional player or two, or a person or two kind of in the background, kind of assisting in that process. So it's interesting to see kind of where this opportunity can marry into the academic side, is my point. Whereas I think a lot of the traditional the traditional sports activities haven't necessarily taken advantage of that. So while and or at least again they might record the game and they might
Yeah.
put it on a YouTube channel, but there's not this breakdown of what's occurring on an academic side. And hey, this is the frame that we used, and this is the angle that why was the lighting here bad, or why is this overlay kind of misaligned? None of that's really occurring in the sense. Whereas I think this particular industry allows for that to happen, kind of more seamlessly. And maybe that's
it does. It is way more seamless than any other element, and which is great. And not a lot of people truly understand that seamless element. But yeah, when you look at traditional sports, the opportunities are there, but they're never adopted because no one thinks to adopt it. Now, if you have a very healthy TV program or something like that, then you have an advisor that may push for more of that. But that's not the case across the entire U.S. and landscape. It happens in more high school than it does in middle school. But middle school really has an amazing opportunity to lend forward to utilizing all of those identifiable career pathways through the lens of esports, right? You are preparing, and through that lens, it's not just the competitive side. And yeah, it really does. It's an amazing opportunity to bring not just the competitive side, but all the career side into one house. And then what's great is actually that's how the real world works. On the other side, if you go in traditional sports, right, and you're talking to like the marketing and the media people, they're not so much disassociated with what's happening with the team itself. I mean, the team logistics are the team logistics, but they're part of the team. Let's take baseball, right? So we're South Jersey, and so Philadelphia Phillies. That's our home baseball team. The announcer for the Phillies, the play-by-play and the call, those guys go wherever the team goes. And so that is more of a realistic understanding of traditional sports, where esports lends to that at a middle school level. And it's giving these students these career pathways that traditional other sports. My son plays tennis. I don't see out there with my son playing tennis, the AV team, the broadcast team. I don't see marketing happening. I mean, they're taking pictures for like social media sometimes, but that is like few and far between. And so traditional sports can lend to that, but I think esports really will focus on that more than any other sport.
Yeah. And I think it does open up a number of different content creation opportunities. So again, kind of pivoting to, back to baseball and traditional sports, you see the Phillies kind of capitalizing on, some of these player kind of personalities. You'll see, things on TikTok and Instagram, et cetera, snippets of Bryce Harper doing this and this. Again, they lean into some of those opportunities because again, it's all about consumable content in some way. Again, if you can build more content opportunities, on those activities of the players themselves, kind of not only on the field, but also off the field, you've gained that opportunity to engage your viewers even more. And again, kind of pivoting to what, again, there's a comment that came in about, really how, middle school esports integration, allows and connects, really to student engagement for, with future ready skills. I mean, it not only does that again, but I do want to pivot over to the student engagement side of things. So as we talk about these opportunities with middle school, so it's not just about having a team, or it's not just about having, an academic program, but it's how the two work together kind of, in this symbiotic relationship, and allows for, engagement opportunities. It allows for fans to occur and followings to happen as a result. How do you see that happening, not only on a middle school, but also on a high school level? Again, is it the same kind of dynamic that could exist on the high school, Josh?
Yeah, it certainly can. I mean, when we're talking about all the different engagement opportunities, beyond just what we're talking about content creation. Yeah. I mean, there's so many different opportunities for marketing and I mean, even the hospitality and tourism side of things within like the coursework that we've helped develop. I think we focused a lot on recently in the past of this conversation of broadcasting content creation. But yeah, I mean, you're seeing middle schools and high schools, once they truly understand all these elements, the student engagement of creating a brand, of then peers, and then really the culture that they also could start creating within their own schools through the lens of esports is it's really amazing, because then that's even what we're seeing is that's even transferring to other elements of the school and the sports that are within the school. Like, well, why can't we just do this with something else? And so you are seeing some of those student engagements transfer, and you're widening the net, right? Where you know that student engagement is not just the players. You're looking at so many other aspects where students are engaging. Middle schoolers are like rolling up their sleeve. So not this past weekend. What's the date? 10 days ago. I know that. Yeah. 10 days ago. I did a Saturday. It was a Saturday workshop for a local school district. I had 86 kids, and all of them were middle school. That came out for a casting and a tournament organization workshop of how to like kind of go through, how to TO and understanding all that. So the engagement is there. These students aren't there just to play the games. And so when I have 86 kids show up on a Saturday, we're probably going in the right direction. I could, like, we were thinking like 30 at the most, and I was like preparing for 10. But then when I saw like several buses show up, I'm like, whoa, that's a lot of kids to deal with. But these kids were engaged. I mean, they just were asking questions. They wanted to be in front of the camera. They wanted to understand how to do stats better. I mean, it was really awesome to watch.
But you're capitalizing not only on, and I mean this from a middle school perspective, you're capitalizing on a student's particular level of interest in gaming.
Yeah.
That is the carrot at the end of the stick. It's gaming, but you're teaching them. These students that attended that event or any of these other events we talked about today are walking away with real 21st century skills that can develop into something that makes them truly sought after from an employer standpoint. So again, it's not about supporting this esports industry specifically directly, but it's about giving them that skill set that can turn into a cybersecurity opportunity, turn into a marketing, director opportunity, or a some kind of business analyst or data analytics specialist in some way. So again, to me that's the why from a middle school perspective, that you want to capture that level of interest. You have a hobby, you have an area that they love doing, that they will spend hours doing, and we're turning that opportunity really into that career opportunity, that career building opportunity for those students.
Yeah, I mean, even in our introductory course, we're going over like budgeting, finance. We're doing SWOT analysis. Now they don't really understand what all that means, but they're going through it and they're getting it because we're utilizing the world of gaming and esports to then teach it. And so and then what starts to happen over time is that gaming and esports thing starts to it does fade in the background, because then they start to pivot to the career pathways, and now they start to understand, oh, I can go into this and do this other thing because I really, really like doing this thing. So it's pretty wild to watch, that transformation with the student itself.
So I know we're getting towards the end of this. Again, I know so I want to go back to that how from a middle school perspective. Again, I know, and Sean, I think you would agree with this. When a district approaches us, we try to give them, the reasons why they should go down this route. That there is, academic opportunities beyond, high school, from a college perspective, from a 2-year to a 4-year. There are industry related opportunities. But what we then try to do is really talk to them about what their resources they have available, how much of a commitment, where their commitment areas are. But I think more importantly, it's aligning them with, integration firms like yours at Esports Integration, to make sure that they have that 3 to 5 year plan that you talked about, so that they're not just throwing money at an idea, but they're throwing money at a strategic plan, that really, will have a direct impact on, on their students that year and for many years beyond. So I guess, how do you see when they come to you, Josh? I guess what do you guide them to do first, and kind of describe that process a little bit?
Yeah. So first thing is, let's identify your goals. What are your goals for this program? I mean, that's the simplest one. And then from there, we take that and then we start making suggestions of like, well, here's where college programs are lying. Here's all the different transferable skills so we kind of walk them through, when we talk about the how is that implementation phase. And that's normally, a couple different meetings that we have with the school and leadership. And we try to get as high up the chain as we can from an administrative perspective. Teachers are fantastic at leading the way, but getting a principal or a superintendent or an assistant superintendent, someone that can bring a level of consistency across the school and the school district, is really important to bring to the table, because we are talking district-wide or school-wide goals that need to be set so that the ship can be all going in the same direction. If everyone's rowing in different directions, oh, I think it's going to do this, oh, I think it's going to get this, you're just going to go around in a circle. And we see a lot of schools do that because some administration thinks it's going to go in one direction, students think it's going to go in a different direction, and then like teachers and faculty and staff think it's going to go in another direction. And so it's first, the how is, well, first let's talk through the goals and let's align that. That then helps to develop that 3 to 5 year plan moving forward. So that for us is step one. If we can't get all on the same page, then it may go somewhere for a bit, but it could quickly stop. So that's our first step normally.
And how long does it take to implement a program, do you think? I mean, what's your average time?
Average time? I mean, if we're not doing like full renderings and build outs and drawings of the space, I mean, it's a couple months for us to go through the report. If you're doing like a full design and implementation of what the space is going to look like, that could take like six months. I mean, the longest one that we've actually gone through from a design perspective from start to finish, because it was pretty big outfit, that took us almost a year to get through. And that was with architects and designers and engineers. It was a pretty big space. So, but most middle school and high school, I would say let's plan for 6 months to get through your project. And then at the end, we actually will turn over a report. So going through that opportunity, what we call a DSA, that service that we offer gives you a full roadmap of everything. It goes over everything from budgeting to what every year is going to look like, costs, because that's the biggest unknown going into this, is planning out the budgeting elements and what things are going to cost year over year. It's not just we're going to build you a facility, which we can, but then what's year 2 look like? How do you prepare for that? If you don't understand where it's going to go, then you can't budget for it. And the next thing you know, you don't have enough funds to then support the program moving forward.
And again, I think the one aspect that we never want to forget is that this industry is continuing to grow around that design process. So if you start today, you're talking about a 6-month or longer implementation process. That industry is going to continue to shift. It's only going to continue to grow based on the growth that we've seen, again, that we talked about at the very beginning of this, over the past couple of years. You can only imagine where it's going to be in another year, 2, 3 years. So kind of that delay only sets a district, kind of an area behind even more as it goes forward. So just things to keep in mind. Again, we certainly don't want to, schools to miss out on these opportunities. It's not as if, the space isn't crowded. The space is crowded now. And again, we're seeing those districts, really feeling kind of left out if they don't have something in place already. So certainly we're here, at Camden County, to assist anybody, again, on the national, international level. So, again, I'll throw my name is, again, David Bruno. You can find me at dbruno, DBRUNO, at camdencc.edu. Sean Dwyer is Dwyer, SDWYER, at camdencc.edu. We can certainly be resources for you in terms of information, guiding you, pushing you in the right direction. And Josh, do you want to share your contact information very quickly?
No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. So you can find us on most socials. Look for either Esports Integration or Horizon AVL. And then esportsintegration.com, horizonavl.com. Actually, our esports integration website's about ready to be remasked in about a week and a half. So that's really cool. There's some really cool things that are coming. So stay tuned to that. But you can always reach out to me directly via email at joshua.kell, joshua.kell at horizonavl.com. That is really the best way to get a hold of me.
Sounds good. Like I said, if you ever, we can always push them to you at some point too.
For sure.
Sure. Yeah.
But again, I'll just kind of stop there. Any closing thoughts again? And this will allow people to kind of submit any questions. But any particular way you wanted to kind of close your thoughts out, Josh?
The world of esports for middle school and is growing rapidly, and so feeding to that pipeline for high schools to college programs, universities. It is a real pipeline. We are seeing more scholarship opportunities. We are seeing more academic opportunities. We are seeing really a major shift. And so if you are a middle school and you're considering what this looks like and you're sort of cautiously entering into that market, is it something that's tangible, real? It is. It definitely has moved. The needle has moved dramatically. And so, that preparation of building out a program is really now. And so if you are someone that knows a middle school program or is in contact with them, encourage them, encourage those thought leaders in the space that it can be beyond. And this is what's really important. It is beyond just the element of the competitive play. It's extremely important. We cannot forget that. But building out a program from start to finish academically, to line with pathways, to line with career future opportunities, to line with CTE programs that are in the high school program at a middle school level is so foundational. And these students, from a cultural perspective, they're leaning towards it. They adopt it. It's part of their lifeline, right? And so now they're both high schoolers, both my kids, but having middle schoolers, that's how they communicated. That's how they engaged through the lens of gaming and esports. And so we want to continue to foster that through these middle school programs.
That's great. And Sean, any way you want to close as well?
No, I mean, you guys have said some fantastic things. Josh talking about how competitive aspect is important, the academic aspect is important in terms of the skills they're learning, but also just from a student outcome perspective. I mean, Josh, you hit on it perfectly, right? Culturally, this is what this is their interest, this is their hobby, and I don't want to discount just how important it is. Even from an after-school perspective, a competitive aspect for these middle schoolers, that having that connection to school, even if they're not pursuing esports academically, is still going to improve their outcomes, no matter what they're pursuing academically.
That's great. And just, again, from my end, kind of share the secret that Sean and Josh know. I am the non-gamer of the two that are on the screen here. Sean is the gamer, I'm the non-gamer. The reason I'm in this industry now is because I saw this growth opportunity. I saw the level of interest that these gamers truly have and the career connections. And I really wanted to make it my mission to make sure that those pathways to those careers that they wanted to achieve and secure, that those pathways were clear. They were aligned, that they made sense, and that they were supported as early as possible. Again, seeing this and the opportunities and what can occur on a middle school level to prepare these students along the way through high school and beyond is really an enormous opportunity. And again, these opportunities really are real. Again, my daughter is at the college age. We were touring colleges, and up at Syracuse University was one of the schools we toured. They mentioned their esports program 3 different times. And during a college visit, a college tour, again, that's probably an hour at most. For them to mention that 3 times means something. Again, there is value behind it. Again, they could have talked about any other program that they had. Instead, they talked about that esports program 3 different times. So the career opportunities are real. starting this as early as middle school or even earlier is only setting your students up for additional success and growth and opportunities along the way. So, again, not seeing any questions kind of coming in. Again, Josh, just want to kind of thank you for jumping on this call, this meeting. Great conversation. And again, certainly anybody that's out there, you can reach out to either of us. Again, Bruno at camdencc.edu, Dwyer at camdencc.edu, or joshua.kell at horizonavl.com. Am I correct? Look at
That's
that.
correct.
And then just kind of a little, for our friends here at ESTA, if you want to learn more about and join the Esports Trade Association as a member, please do. We've gained not only a number of, really contacts in the industry, but really have helped understand kind of where the industry is going and helping supporting it and growing it on. But you can learn more at www.esports.org. It really has been a great organization to support the growth of this industry, and certainly join us for some upcoming events, especially the virtual coffee connections. They are a great time, great networking opportunity. The next one is on June 3rd at 9 a.m. That's in Central Standard Time. I will be there, so if you want to chat with me a little bit more, join us at that coffee connection. Again, that's on June 3rd at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. So, and one more, Esports Next magazine. And I know there's a couple of articles with Camden County College and me in there as well. The spring edition is available. So you can find that at https://esportsta.org/magazine. Again, there have been some great articles over the years. I know this particular edition with some of the work that we did with esports analytics and AI is featured in there, as well as some of the the growth that we've seen at Camden County College, and some other articles that might be of note as well too. So, well, thank you, Josh. We appreciate the conversation. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we look forward to talking with everybody soon. So, thank you so much.
Appreciate the time.